Thanks everyone. How is everyone doing? Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Bastion Roundtable. Today with us, we've got Alison Cusack of Cusack Co. And we're going to be talking about trends and just what the latest up to date is around ocean freight. Just quickly, in terms of introducing Alison, Alison is the principal for Cusack Co., which is a maritime focused law firm assisting shippers and freight forwarders with tailored contracts in ocean carriage. Bachelor of Law, she was corporate counsel at A&L. She's the president of WISTA, which is the Women's International Shipping and Trading Association. She's a lecturer at Victoria University, where she teaches business and corporate law, specifically in supply chain. She was, in 2017, named one of the top 30 under 30 lawyers here in Australia. Avid social media contributor. If you're on Clubhouse, I guarantee you would have seen her recently pop up everywhere. And then recently, she's also been awarded the Daily Cargo News 2020 Shipping and Maritime Industry Awards for the Young Achievement Award. So highly accomplished, really impressive profile. And I thought it'd be a bit of a different, unique position to bring her on and just talk about ocean freight. And the reason that's interesting, I believe, for us is a lot of leaders talking to me about constraints in their supply chain, constraints in terms of vessel capacity, constraints with ports and labor issues, lack of container assets in the network, rates with carriers and vessels, even disputes with Incoterms and ownership of product at sea. And then you add all of that into, some of the shortages we've got in places like plastics and rubbers and semiconductors right now. There's just a lot of discussion and content right now within supply chain leaders across the globe around freight, around specifically ocean freight. And so with Alison's unique perspective, I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of get her to come on and talk a little bit about what she's seeing, some of the challenges, and maybe some advice for anyone there who's having some problems as well. So, well, first of all, thanks again for coming on, Alison.
Thanks for having me. I'm always excited to nerd out about supply chain and contracts.
It's good to have you here. So look, I guess just to start off, I mean, do you see any kind of consistencies or major issues or disputes that some of your customers are having, some consistencies, any kind of issues that are pretty normal across the board, across the network right now?
Absolutely. Container shortages is massively affecting the supply chain. So seeing it from all the different vantage points. So, I'm sitting in Clubhouse talking to people about, they're paying $16,000 surcharge USD per container. And they're getting an email and they're saying, right, you got to get back to us by midday tomorrow. And you need 120 containers and I've got 40. And they're like, oh my God, I'm going to move my marketing budget and I'm going to just do it to get the product. And then they go back at 10 a.m. the next day and they said, sorry, someone else has beaten to the punch and they've offered more money. You've missed out. And so they're desperately trying to get, product out of China, and we're seeing at least 180 days lead time for product to come out. I don't know if you saw Peloton are starting to air freight.
Yeah,
cargoes. So they're bikes. I think what it's really doing is it's really separating those who understand their supply chain and those that kind of understood their supply chain, because you see the freight forwarders and those in the business who know it, who know its nuances, who knows how it's almost alive, right? Whereas other people are like, oh, but you just move stuff from A to B and it just happens and it's magic, and you're like, it's not, it's really not. And it's really showing where the gaps are in the base knowledge of the industry and then the company specific knowledge about what their products are. And a big sort of risk issue I've seen is that everyone rushed to pivot during COVID, right? Everyone's pivoting. Let's diversify. Let's go to India instead of China, and let's do this and let's do that. And I'm like, did you review your contracts? Did you review rates?
Yeah.
Did you review your Incoterms?
Yeah.
Did you tell your insurer? Did you have all your legal risk insurance framework catch up to that pivot? I'm very pro pivot, but did everything catch up? And it's been, if it was maybe a couple of weeks, your insurers might have been a bit kind about it, but if it's been 8 months,
sure,
they may be a little less inclined to come to the party if they don't need
Okay.
you, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Are you seeing with the insurers many disputes around coverage and disputes around coverage?
Uh,
Do you have those conversations?
the the insurance market's in a bear market right now. So
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I'm not sure if you were keeping up to date with the business interruption insurance
No,
case.
sorry.
But yeah, no, that's fine. I sort of saw it.
That's not my space.
You mean it's not what you want? You know, every day you
No,
get
I don't wake up reading that. No.
business interruption. Come on. It's what all the cool kids are reading on Twitter these days.
I'll have to follow it up. Yeah.
So, you know, it's how does your policies defined? But
Yep.
what I find with insurers is that, you know, if you're doing the right thing and something goes amiss, they'll come to the party. If you're blatantly rolling the dice all the time on their dollar and on their risk and on their, you know, underwriting,
Sure.
that, you know, you're not being, because insurers have the principle of, you know, good faith. They've got the doctrine of good faith, which basically is if you've stuffed up in your insurance disclosure, they can cancel your insurance back to day dot when you took it out.
Right. Okay.
So there is, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love supply chain industry, international trade, but we're a little loose sometimes. You know, we're a little Wild West, shoot from the hip, which is great. It's fine. It allows you to pivot, allows you to be robust, allows you to be agile, but have a framework and have a base in which to move in that is really important, because I've literally seen pages and pages of correspondence internally within our own company saying, did we sell this on XWorks or did we sell this at CIF? And they're like, I don't know. What does the insurance cert say? And they're like, didn't issue one. And then they're like, well, what does the contract say? And like, well, the contract kind of mentions XWorks. And then as you go down, it talks about CIF, and it's very confusing. And you just reading correspondence, you know, as a lawyer after the fact, going, really concerned that you can't just go, bang, it's XWorks, bang, it's CIF.
Right.
You know, you shouldn't have a supplier and a buyer kind of, if someone lobbed the question in, what are your Incoterms? And they look at each other kind of like shifting side eye going, XWorks, yes, that's what I was going to say. Because of course, your insurance, you know, Incoterms dictates if anyone is going to be who's taking out insurance. It's kind of a big deal. I'm not sure if you or your audience are familiar with all the containers that are going overboard currently. So, you know, we started off with the APL England off our own shores in May last year, and then we had the one APIS, which just literally...
Wasn't it like an obscene number in terms of total volume or percentage? I saw something yesterday. It was like...
One APIS was astronomical. So in the industry, 5 to 10, 5 is kind of like, it's not great, but you know.
Yeah, that's right. It's most of the ship, right? Most of the load is going now or something.
Yeah, so like, you know, five boxes going overboard, you're like, look, it's not great. Would prefer not to have it, but you know, practically they're empties, and we just, you know, I mean, you report and stuff, but you move along. And then when the APL England happened, that was about 50, and that was like, oh, 50, that's massive. And then the one APIS came along and was 1,800 overboard on a 14,000 ship. But if you look at the drone footage that WK Webster did, it's about something like 16 to 18 of the stacks were compromised out of about 24. So just nearly every single stack was, you know, unhappy. So what the problem you have there is, it's too late to get insurance at that point. And the problem is, you know, it's not like, oh, we're going to make a claim, blah, blah. It's a practical issue. You want your cargo. You never not want your cargo, right? You're buying your cargo for a reason. You didn't know if your cargo was overboard. You didn't know if your cargo was in a collapsed stack. You didn't know if your cargo was safe. And then it goes back to Kobe, and they have to manually unload that. You can't just get the spreader and pick it up, because it goes like, you know, the gantry goes, I'm going to pick it up like that. The gantry doesn't go, I'll just inch in there on an angle. So months and months and months to find out where your cargo is, right? So in terms of a practical resilience of your business, there's at least like 5 really well-known breakpoints in your supply chain. What's your game plan for those breakpoints? They will happen. And people go, oh, containers overboard rarely happens. It's cool, one APIS. I'm like, okay, there's 1,900 containers. And then we get the Maersk Essen, and then we get the Maersk Eindhoven. And I was like, is it still really low risk? Is it? Because I feel like it's not. And I don't bring up risk to be like doom and gloom and like, Alison just wants to like terrify us. It's like, no, I just want you to feel smug that when it happens, everyone else is running around like headless chook. And you're like, no, Alison made me sit down and do a disaster recovery plan. I'm putting it out and I'm going, you know, option B, bang, go. And everyone's at the golf day going, oh my God, stressed me out. And you go, I was sorted.
Are you surprised how many businesses don't have disaster recovery plans? Is it?
I'm less and less surprised. Let's put it that way.
So that happens more and more. Okay.
Fair. You know, the thing I say is, as a manager, don't you want to have pre-made these decisions and got senior management approval, got your ops approval, got your sales approval, got your board approval, and distill it in a way that your customer service manager or person or your ops, you know, sort of junior person can just execute.
Yep.
You can go on with your day. They can go on with their day. You can take holidays, and you don't. I mean, how many organizations do you see that they're quite large, but in reality, their bus number is one. That one key person goes on leave or is uncontactable for 4 hours, and the whole thing just collapses. And these things never happen like Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. and you're like, great, we can just plan it out. They happen on Easter, right? They happen over Christmas. The supply chain knows when you don't want it to happen. That's what happens. So,
I've never heard anyone talk about it in the third person, but that's pretty good.
Well, you should hear me talk about blockchain. It gets wild. But the thing is, we have this knowledge, right? Distill it down. Yes, we can respond really quickly, but you already know what you're going to want to do. Don't you want to do that in a calm way and be organized, just sorted and pre-plan?
Yep.
And just put that pre-planning in and then execute. Like, yes, supply chain is 24/7, but you don't have to add in more out of office hours and more, because disaster recovery is not business as usual for people who are in cargo. Claims are not business as usual. They upend everything, and I've seen that in my time. And it's not just, it's not the cost of the claim and it's not the cost of the disaster. It's the time sunk by so many key people. And you see there's like 400 emails on it. And you're like, why? We didn't have to do this under pressure. So I guess that's my point, is what we should be learning from COVID is things will happen, right? Breaks in the supply chain will happen. If you've not had it so far, you've been very, very lucky, and you should take that opportunity to go, maybe my luck's going to run out. And because it's not, there's internal controls and external controls, right? So like you can control all your internals to the best of your ability, and your container could still fall off a ship. So for me, I just say, why not help yourself and help your staff, and make it a point of difference that you know, or you can find out in 30 seconds. Information. What are the Incoterms? Okay, container's fallen off a ship. Right. Which client was it? Great. Pull the file, have the master information, and be like, cool, I know it's theirs. I don't have to worry about it. I'll send them a nice little sweet note going, hey, sorry, your container is off the ship. It's not my container right now. So you just let me know when you know what's going on.
Yeah, look, that's a great point. And it kind of takes me to another topic I wanted to cover quickly with you was, so Incoterms and inventory ownership and disputes right now. And I bring this up because even this week I've had two different clients talk. One's a large European electrical component manufacturer, one's a global food manufacturer, and both have either got finished products or raw materials sitting out in the ocean, essentially sitting at sea. And their typical inventory percentage in transit is around 20 to 30%, give or take. And right now it's sitting at 50% to 60% of their inventory is at sea at the moment. And so when it comes to payment terms, ownership, anything to do with Inco, there's a lot of the conversation around whose responsibility is it right now. Are you getting approached about these types of issues at the moment? Are you seeing any kind of trends popping up, or unintended consequences, maybe a better way of saying it?
Unintended consequences is a perfect way of saying it. And again, it comes to not knowing or not pivoting. So there's this kind of like, it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm like, it's not broken yet. And so I've literally know of scenarios where things go wrong and they're like, oh, that's okay because we, have this Incoterm, and someone else has to be like, no, that's not the Incoterm. And there's this kind of, I don't know if it comes from people being like, I just don't quite understand Incoterms, but I don't want to admit it.
Right.
And so therefore they just kind of like nod and agree and just, have that kind of niggling feeling in the back of their head that they're like, but again, it comes back to just having real clarity around what is your Incoterm and who told you that? Which document told you that's the Incoterm? Was that in an email but not in a contract? Do your standard terms conditions have a certain Incoterm, but you've put something else different in the body of the email? Do your accounts team understand Incoterms? Right? Do they understand? Do they understand when the payment triggers? And then what I've seen is this horrifying, to me as a lawyer, horrifying. It's like a bastardization of Incoterms. They'll take an Incoterm and then they'll like change it up a little bit, and they'll be like CIF plus 20%, and I'm like, plus 20% of what?
Right. Okay.
Of what? You're terrifying me now. What does that mean? And so they make their own kind of Incoterms. I'm like, no, stop. No,
that doesn't work.
You don't. And also, you don't have to use Incoterms if you don't want to. You don't have to. The point was to simplify. And then the other issue, which people kind of forgot about due to COVID, is we've got the 2020 set. And so the thing is, you might be hardwired into the 2010 set because you literally say 2010 all the time, or you might have a clause in a contract that says the latest in force as issue. So it's automatically updated to the 2020. And of course, some of the terms disappeared.
Right. Okay.
And some of the definitions changed. Now, did anybody look at it? Did anyone do a risk analysis and say, should we just I'm not saying don't. I mean, look, yes, as a lawyer, I'd be like, yes, please pay me to dig out all your contracts and go through all of them and check all of them. Yes, I would love that, please.
We'll include Alison's email after the video is posted. Don't worry.
Give me the net, but just do a sample. Just go free. And no, I'm saying you can task the junior in your office to pull 2 or 3 contracts, and then don't be surprised when they come to you and go, "There's like not a contract."
Yeah.
And then that's when they're kind of like, no. And then this is what I hear. Yeah, but there must be a contract. And you're like, no. The amount of people who don't even have contracts should not surprise me anymore, but still surprises me. People do a lot of business with a lot of dollars on a handshake, which is fine. Knock yourselves out, but I can't do much for you.
Sure. And do you see, you would have potential customers who are, let's say 10 to 15 years with the same freight forwarder, the same vessels, and those terms expire, and then they just assume those terms continue to apply. I would assume you'd run into people will go, well, that's how it's always done. And then you go, well, no, or we've updated our terms, or those terms are no longer applicable, right?
My most hated phrase is that's the way we've always done it, because I'm just like, that's what Melvin Capital thought when it came to GameStop. And that didn't work out too well for them, because there's always going to be a bunch of Redditors ready to just like set your business on fire. And that's kind of like what COVID did a little bit to some of their practices. It just went, I don't care. But you're right. So what people do is they have, so your freight forwarder hopefully has standard terms conditions. Hopefully. Sometimes they don't. They think they do and they don't, and it's a whole nother conversation. But then they do a nice negotiated contract, like the work I do, but then it's got a hard expiry term. And it's like, this contract can be extended for 1 year, but maximum will expire at 2018.
Right.
But no one seems to have contract management processes in place to even have a calendar reminder, and then it lapses. And then the freight is like, well, we're reverted back to our standard terms conditions. And the customer's like, no, but I got all these great terms. And this is where I end up stepping into the breach, is because the question is, which applies? Because then you get into all these things like, oh, but conduct is acceptance, and, rolling terms and waiver, and, and then if you don't have terms at all, you start talking about bailment, which should be a dead piece of like law, which barely gets taught at law school anymore, but supply chain's bringing it back with a vengeance. because they don't like contracts.
Okay.
And I have to start running arguments on sub-bailment and bailment on terms. And lawyers are like, what? And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's supply chain. We don't play by the rules. Supply chain and international trade, we have like all our own stuff. We're like, oh, but this is the principles that I'm like, psh, yeah, no, but we're international trade. We're different. We're built different. You know, we talk about bills of lading, and they're like, but I've never seen those terms. And everyone's like, well, yeah, but you know, we've got a lot of case law backing us up here. So it's quite funny when I, as a marine lawyer, encounter non-marine lawyers about contracts, and they're like, we want to take all of this out. We don't want to refer to the Hague-Visby rules at all. And I was like, I mean, like, you can want that for your client, but it's not going to happen. So I'll give you 30 seconds to process it. So we're a unique breed, but we should lean into it, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, 100%. I mean, I think I've seen a number of examples. I've been doing, search and recruitment in the space for 10 years, and the amount of unusual circumstances and situations that pop. I'm sure other functions or industries have their own kind of niche issues as well, but this one definitely tends to set its own rules, or rules after the fact, right? Well, I don't know. That's how it's done. But it's definitely interesting. I guess.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to wrap it up here and say, with your expertise in contracts management and managing people through disputes and things like that, you as a professional in this space, any kind of advice just to start around resolving a dispute, or and I ask the question because right now there's a lot of tension in the network. If you go on, even just I mentioned Clubhouse earlier, and you go on and listen to any of these supply chain forums, people are, clients and shippers are complaining about the carriers and the vessels and the gouging and rates and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of angst in the network around this particular topic, right? So it's a hard one for you to answer, say, do this one thing, because it's never one size fits all. But any advice or expertise around what's the first step to go about, trying to resolve a dispute in a specific climate right now?
For me, what I actually, you might be surprised by this, what I actually say is, I'm like, hey, you are not going to be able to control the carriers right now. You're not going to be able to control their rollings, they're pulling, like, just let them do what they're doing and just adapt to that. But what you can do is look internally about what you're doing internally to put yourself in the best position, because it's like a 3-step process, right? Like, first one, collect all your own data, manage your own internal stuff. Where are all your contracts? Find all your contracts. Where are all your claims? Grab them and put them in a box, right? You're at collecting information stage, and get visibility on what your supply chain actually looks like. I don't care if you just rough drawing it up as boxes and, you're like Asia to, the US. That's fine. Get real clear visibility on what your supply chain is, where your documents are, where you stand. Then we can start looking at how to maximize your position on what you can do internally, because people don't realize that there are things that you do externally with the carrier to maximize your position, but there's also things internally that you can do to game the system or hack it quite legally that people aren't aware of, right? So next step is, and this is literally a service I offer, I'll come in, hold your hand. I nerd for this stuff, is hack the system that you're doing, right? Hack it to get visibility. And one of the things I do is, if you ever negotiate a contract with an ocean carrier, I can literally translate that into commercial reality for you and your managers. I take all the legals and go, hey, the reality is, if your vessel gets delayed, this is the commercial impact or cost or what you can recover. Bang. I translate that, because I used to do that when I was in-house lawyer. Then the third step I say is, right, now we have visibility, we've maximized our own position, let's go. Let's go after the carriers, because they're spending, and I get it. It is a minefield out there. There's no containers, there's no space, there's no equipment. The rates are insane. Surcharge, GRIs, like, come on. I just want my reefer. Just give me my reefer and stop making me pay for the privilege of plugging it in. I get it. But you know what? That's taking up a lot of energy, and you're spinning your wheels. Let's get a game plan, and in 6 months, when tender season opens back up, let's hit those RFPs, but we've put our company in the best position, because then you have such clarity when you're negotiating and you have the data and you have the stats.
Yeah. Okay. No, look, that's wonderful advice, Alison. Again, thank you so much for coming on today. I think this is really great. Just a quick update in terms of what you're seeing and getting an insight into your head and your knowledge around this market right now. For everyone watching, thanks for taking a listen, and leave us your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. I'll also leave Alison's contact details in there for you too. So if you have any questions or concerns, or just want to pick her brain or talk on Clubhouse with her, I'm sure she'd love that too. Feel free to reach out to her. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. See you guys.